Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 of our deep dive into the teachings of Confucius. If you caught part 1, you already know how Confucius's ideas on benevolence, propriety, filial piety, and virtuous leadership laid the foundation for one of the world's most enduring philosophies. If you're starting here, don't worry. You'll still gain insights into how these core principles shaped entire societies across East Asia and continue to influence modern life today. In this video, we'll explore how Confucianism molded governance and culture in China, then traveled through Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and beyond. We'll also tackle common misconceptions, modern clashes and alignments with Western values, and practical ways to apply Confucian wisdom in our lives. Let's get started. With the rise of the Han Dynasty, Confucianism became the bedrock of Chinese state ideology. Over subsequent centuries and dynasties, Confucian teachings permeated every aspect of life, from how families conducted funeral rites to how emperors were expected to govern. The civil service examination system was deeply rooted in Confucian texts and principles, effectively creating a meritocratic path for those who mastered these teachings to govern. At the societal level, Confucius's emphasis on hierarchy, respect, and education greatly shaped interpersonal relations. Family clans often operated under Confucian norms, holding ancestors in high regard through elaborate ancestral rites. Social harmony was prioritized over individual expression, a mentality that still resonates in many parts of modern China despite rapid economic and cultural changes. Through this historical backdrop, we can see how Confucian virtues didn't just remain abstract ideas, they became lived realities. They influenced art, literature, communal values, and even conflict resolution methods. Today, as China continues to evolve in the global arena, many Confucian norms remain embedded in social expectations, from the emphasis on academic success to the tradition of caring for aging parents in multi-generational households. In Korea, Confucianism took root particularly strongly during the Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1897. The ruling class of scholar officials, or yangban, adhered to a strict code of Confucian morality, influencing everything from government policy to household rules. The Korean adaptation of Confucian thought also brought a heightened focus on filial piety, ancestor worship, and proper ritual observances. One notable development in Korea was the Confucian academies, Sewon, scattered across the countryside, serving as both educational institutions and shrines to Confucian sages. Here, local scholars studied Confucian classics in tranquil settings, reflecting Korea's unique commitment to the scholarly life. This tradition deeply shaped Korean society, instilling values of hard work, respect for authority, and academic excellence. Even in modern times, Korean culture retains a strong Confucian influence. Respect for elders, group harmony, and a robust educational ethic are hallmarks of contemporary Korean life. For instance, many young Koreans still feel a strong sense of duty to care for aging parents, and titles or forms of address emphasizing hierarchy, e.g., using honorifics based on seniority, remain commonplace. For Westerners, these customs might be intriguing glimpses into how Confucian ideas have survived and evolved across centuries and borders. Confucian thought also made a significant impact in Japan, particularly during the Tokugawa shogunate, 1603 to 1868. While Japan certainly had its own rich indigenous belief systems, like Shinto and various schools of Buddhism, Confucian values fused with local traditions to shape samurai ethics, social hierarchies, and governance practices. Neo-Confucianism, a later development that reinterpreted Confucius's teachings, became influential in defining Bushido, the way of the warrior. The samurai class valued loyalty, respect, duty, and honor, all of which align closely with Confucian virtues. Although Bushido also drew heavily from Zen Buddhism and Shinto beliefs, Confucian principles of moral conduct and hierarchical respect were essential in forging the code of the warrior. Over time, these values trickled down into broader Japanese society. Even after the collapse of the shogunate, Confucian ideals found their way into modern education systems introduced during the Meiji Restoration. Today, while Japanese society is highly modernized and globally connected, elements of Confucian thought persist in social etiquette, corporate culture, and family dynamics. Bowing, for instance, is not just a polite gesture. It's a culturally embedded form of li, displaying respect in a physical, ritualized manner. Vietnam, another East Asian culture deeply shaped by Chinese influence, similarly integrated Confucianism into its governance and social fabric. Imperial Vietnam adopted the Confucian-based civil service examination system as a way to recruit mandarins, scholar officials who studied the Confucian classics extensively. This created a class of learned elites who administered local and state affairs, ensuring that Confucian ideals directed legal codes, social norms, and cultural life. Ancestor worship and filial piety also became key components of Vietnamese life. Temples dedicated to Confucius can still be found, echoing a deep respect for education and moral rectitude. Although Vietnam underwent periods of French colonial rule and modern political realignments, Confucian ideas about respect for elders, community harmony, and moral leadership endure in various forms. Whether it's festivals honoring ancestors or the reverence shown to teachers, the Confucian emphasis on learning and filial devotion remains an undercurrent in Vietnamese society. What might be surprising to some Western viewers is that many Confucian ideas are quietly influencing global norms through diaspora communities, educational exchanges, and the rising cultural soft power of East Asian nations. For instance, the popularity of Korean dramas or Chinese cinema often showcases Confucian-inspired family dynamics, children navigating obligations to their parents, or stories where community harmony prevails over individual conflict. These cultural products introduce Confucian values to international audiences in subtle, relatable ways. Additionally, some Western corporations and institutions have begun exploring the merits of Confucian leadership models. The idea that leaders should model virtue, act with empathy, and consider the welfare of the group resonates with modern discussions about ethical leadership, corporate social responsibility, and stakeholder capitalism. While the contexts are certainly different, the underlying principles find common ground in universal human aspirations. Before we move on, let's address a few misunderstandings that often arise when Western audiences first learn about Confucius. One is the assumption that Confucianism is a rigid dogmatic system that stifles individuality. While there's no denying Confucian societies historically placed a heavy emphasis on hierarchy and social roles, modern interpretations are more nuanced. Many contemporary scholars argue that Confucian values can be adapted to promote social harmony without completely sacrificing personal freedom. Another misconception is that Confucianism is identical to religion. It's more accurate to describe it as a philosophy or an ethical system, though in East Asia it has often functioned alongside religious practices like Buddhism, Taoism, Shinto, or ancestral rites. Confucian temples might look like places of worship, but they're often more like memorial halls where people pay tribute to Confucius and his virtues. Finally, some people assume that Confucianism is only about strict morality, ignoring the emotional or compassionate aspects of life. In truth, benevolence, is a deeply empathetic principle, encouraging genuine concern for others. When balanced with li, ritual propriety, and Xiao, filial piety, Confucianism can create a community that values moral structure, but does so with a genuine heart for human well-being. Confucianism holds many parallels to Western philosophies, valuing ethical leadership, community well-being, and personal moral development. Where it can seem to clash is in its emphasis on hierarchy and collectivism. Western societies often champion individual rights and personal freedom above communal obligations, which can lead to tension when, for instance, a young adult wishes to move out or pursue a career path against parental wishes, something that's far more normalized in many Western countries. However, as the global community becomes more interconnected, there's also room for a syncretic approach. Many Westerners already practice a form of filial respect, caring for aging parents, honoring family traditions at holidays, and see the virtue in communal welfare, as evidenced by grassroots movements, charities, and social programs. Similarly, East Asian societies influenced by Confucianism are increasingly recognizing the importance of personal agency and self-expression. This cross-cultural blending shows that Confucian and Western values aren't necessarily polar opposites. They can complement each other in interesting ways. There's a lot we can learn from each tradition, whether it's emphasizing the importance of strong family bonds or championing the individual's right to choose their path. In recent decades, East Asia's economic rise has brought global attention to the Confucian work ethic. Similar to the Weberian idea of the Protestant work ethic in the West, some argue that Confucian values, especially emphasis on education and discipline, have fueled rapid development in places like South Korea, Japan, and parts of China. While the reality is more complex than attributing economic booms to a single factor, there's no doubt that cultural virtues, like valuing education, respecting authority, and prioritizing group success, can influence societal outcomes. Additionally, leaders in some East Asian countries invoke Confucian ideals to address social challenges. For instance, in debates about elder care or education reform, references to filial piety and moral responsibility often appear in public discourse. On a global stage, some policy analysts look at Confucian ideas about harmonious social order as a counterpoint to Western liberal individualism. While this can spark debates around human rights and political freedoms, it also opens conversations about how different philosophical traditions can shape policies in a rapidly changing world. To give a more tangible sense of how Confucianism might apply in daily life, imagine you have a small team project at work. A Confucian-inspired approach would encourage the team leader to act with kindness, fairness, and moral clarity, placing the team's goals above personal ego. Team members in turn would show respect for the leader and for each other, offering support and honest feedback. If conflicts arise, they'd be resolved through open communication and empathy, rather than confrontation or rigid enforcement of rules. Alternatively, consider family life. A Confucian-minded household might regularly check in on grandparents or older relatives, scheduling family dinners to maintain close bonds. Parents would emphasize moral teaching and respect for educational pursuits, while children would understand their role includes gratitude and caring for their parents when they get older. These customs exist in Western families as well, but in a Confucian context, they're reinforced by cultural norms that extend beyond individual choice, making them socially expected behaviors. On a personal level, adopting a Confucian lens might motivate you to reflect on how you treat others. Do you put empathy and genuine kindness at the forefront? Do you uphold courtesy and respect in your daily interactions, from the way you greet your neighbors to how you conduct yourself online? These are everyday opportunities to practice Ren and Li in our modern world. It would be incomplete not to mention the criticisms of Confucianism. Some argue it fosters rigid social hierarchies, which can be oppressive, especially toward women and younger individuals. In traditional interpretations, wives had limited autonomy, and younger people were expected to obey elders without question. Critics also point out that the stress on conformity and communal harmony might stifle creativity or dissenting opinions. In modern times, feminist scholars and progressive thinkers in East Asia have revisited Confucian texts, offering reinterpretations that highlight mutual respect and moral reciprocity, rather than one-sided obedience. Such reevaluations aim to preserve the virtues of Confucianism, like empathy, family loyalty, and social responsibility, while shedding outdated or unjust social structures. In this way, Confucianism, like any enduring philosophical system, is not static. It's continually being reinterpreted to fit contemporary realities and ethical standards. Even if you've never stepped foot in an East Asian country, there's plenty in Confucian thought that can enrich your life. For instance, consider the emphasis on continuous self-improvement. Rather than being content with mediocrity or blaming external factors for our shortcomings, Confucius invites us to refine our character steadily over time. This aligns well with Western ideals of personal development and lifelong learning. The practice of filial piety, in a broader sense, reminds us to remain grateful to those who shaped us, whether they are biological parents, mentors, or community leaders. It's a lesson in humility and appreciation, reminding us that we're part of a larger story. Likewise, paying attention to li, or proper conduct, can make our day-to-day interactions more respectful and mindful. In a world that often feels polarized and fragmented, the idea that small rituals of politeness can foster social harmony might be more relevant than ever. Finally, the Confucian notion that leaders should exemplify moral virtue is a valuable ideal in any system. While human nature being what it is, we can't always rely on leaders to embody this principle. It challenges us to demand and strive for ethical leadership. It also challenges us, as individuals, to examine how we govern ourselves. Are we practicing the virtues we'd like to see in our leaders? Confucianism stands as a testament to how a single thinker's vision, rooted in empathy, respect, and responsibility, can shape entire civilizations. From the dynastic courts of ancient China to contemporary boardrooms in Seoul, from the family altars in Vietnam to the bowing customs in Tokyo, Confucius's ideas about virtue, family, and social harmony have endured for more than 2.5 millennia. In a modern Western context, it's easy to see Confucianism as exotic, or to focus on the differences in social structures and values. But when we dig deeper, we find universal themes: care for others, the importance of moral leadership, the role of education in cultivating virtue, and the belief that strong families contribute to a strong society. These themes resonate with people around the globe, regardless of cultural background. So, as you go about your day, consider how you might incorporate a bit of Confucian wisdom into your life. Perhaps it's being more mindful of the respect you show your parents, or making a concerted effort to act with benevolence in your workplace. Or maybe it's simply pausing to appreciate the moral underpinnings of the relationships that sustain you. Because in the end, Confucius's vision boils down to one fundamental principle: better people create a better world. And that's a lesson we can all learn from, no matter where we live. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of Confucius's teachings and their impact on East Asian cultures. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, or comment with your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for more content that bridges cultural wisdom across the globe. Until next time, stay curious, stay empathetic, and remember that a little bit of kindness can go a long way in building the world we all want to live in.